Imagine living your life after 50 and feeling energized and excited about your future. Welcome to the Women in the Middle podcast, the podcast for women who are ready to figure out what they want and create the life they deserve. Here's your host and master certified life coach, Susie Rosenstein.
Hey there, today's episode is all about healing binge eating in midlife. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast Women in the Middle. I'm your host, Susie Rosenstein, your master certified coach and midlife mentor. And I am so glad to be here with you again for a really important episode, which is all about healing binge eating in midlife with internal family systems with Martha Ayim. So, do you or somebody you know have a binge eating disorder? It's quite possible you know somebody, but you're probably unaware of their struggle. Today, you'll hear about what binge eating may look like for midlife women and what help can look like to stop. And I'll tell you more about my amazing guest in just a few minutes. But just quick, I have a question for you. Did you know that I offer some really cool free midlife stuff? Well, I do. And it's all super useful when you've got midlife transformation on your mind, so you should check it out. The first thing is my free monthly classes. That's webinars and workshops. And yes, I have them just about every month. That's my goal. I try to have them every month. The topics are things you're likely interested in if you want to stop wasting valuable time and get on with the good stuff in midlife. You know, just that little issue of regret-proofing your life. As a woman over 50 or maybe over 60 like me, you know all too well that life is too short to dilly-dally. It's time to live the life of your dreams and have more fun doing it. Give yourself permission to be happy. So to find out what webinars and workshops are happening, and more about the July workshop, if you're listening in real time, it's called She Deserves More. Just head on over to www.susierosenstein.com and you'll see the link right at the top of the homepage. You can sign up there. There's another page on my website too that you're going to want to check out. It's my free resources. There are links there that go directly to some free stuff, e-guides, a Facebook group, the Women in the Middle blog, some resources, a mini video training to help you get unstuck, and a link to media highlights and podcast interviews I've done over the last few months, actually some from the last few years too, including a recent one this year, a weekend piece in Bloomberg called There's a Coach for That by Mark Elwood. Just head over to www.susierosenstein.com, click on the free resources tab, and have fun. Okay, now let me tell you about my amazing guest. Today's show is about healing binge eating in midlife with internal family systems with Martha Ayim. Specifically, today's interview is with somebody who healed her nearly 35-year pattern of binge eating and knew that she was meant to spend the rest of her life helping others to do the same. In her late 40s, she left a full-time pensioned government position to follow that passion. Martha Ayim is a certified master coach and level 3 internal family systems practitioner. IFS, Internal Family Systems, is an evidence-based, trauma-informed, empowering approach that harnesses a client's intuitive wisdom to heal. She is also a program assistant for trainings offered through the IFS Institute and a consultant for IFS therapists, physicians, and other practitioners. Most women who seek Martha's support are successful in so many areas of their lives, but haven't been able to heal their relationship with food. They often find themselves unable to control their eating despite trying many approaches. Martha's experience of the pain of this journey and the joy of recovery fuels her love for this work. I was particularly delighted to have Martha as my guest today, as we have known each other now for years, decades actually. We've watched and supported each other as we've pivoted and transitioned into our extremely fulfilling next chapter, midlife careers. It's been an exciting and rewarding time of life, made only better by having a good friend and colleague to share it with. I know you're going to get so much amazing insight and perspective from this episode. Please remember, the information shared in this podcast is intended for your convenience, entertainment, and education, and isn't geared to your personal situation. It's not a replacement for care or advice from your own medical professional. So as always, you may have some things you want to follow up on, so please seek a suitable professional to advise you on your personal situation. Please enjoy. Hi, Martha. Thanks so much for joining me today on the Women in the Middle podcast.
Hi, Susie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Oh my gosh, I am thrilled to have you finally come on for so many reasons. First, because you have so much valuable information to help women finally heal their relationship with food, but also because we worked together what feels like a million years ago, and we both enjoyed our midlife career changes together. And as one of my first coaching clients years ago, we got to share all of that too. So I actually want to touch base on that one for a sec. I remember that when I just started out, I was looking for free clients, and I was just wondering what was going on with you that you said yes to that offer.
To be honest, that's kind of the funny part of our story, which was I was more worried about you becoming a coach than I really was kind of thinking that this could be helpful. I had gone back to school to become a clinical psychologist, and I really believed in academia. I was an academic. I wanted something that was licensed. And yeah, so really it was more a curiosity about what you were doing. And what unfolded was such a beautiful thing, which was, first of all, a real sense of humbling for me because you helped me so much. And what I came to learn was that the coaching that you offered me and the slowing down and really giving permission to pause and look at what was I thinking and why might I be thinking things like that and how did that affect my life? How profound that was. And there was something really beautiful about it. That expression, walking each other home, like being with another fellow human colleague. I didn't have to be mired in problems, but there was something really helpful and human about this work.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you were worried about me. That's hilarious. I was worried about me too, but not for that exact reason. But, making a big change when you have no certainty, because we all kind of believe there is certainty, which is hilarious in and of itself. But I was thrilled to be able to coach you as another fellow human being and colleague and somebody who I had stuff in common with, but I didn't realize how much, even though we'd worked together for years. So
Yeah.
that was really so nice for you to have said that just now and also for sharing that. Now, I love talking about the details and experience that people have with coaching because it really helps listeners think a bit differently about what might be going on for them and if coaching might be something that could make a big difference in their lives too. So again, just thank you for sharing that. Now, let's get into your story a bit more related to food and
Mhm.
specifically binge eating. Tell us what was going on for you in your 40s. Why were you looking to make a change?
Well, Susie, like so many of my clients, I was really successful. I had a job that I liked. I was well educated. My job paid me well. I could take care of myself, and there was enough to take care of other needs. Like in many areas of my life, I felt fine, but there was this one piece, and it was a big piece around my eating that despite 30 plus years and going to professionals for help, I couldn't beat. And so I knew at that point that I was either going to figure this out or the rest of my life would be committed to trying to figure it out. Or at least, and this is where I got to later, being a part of the process, I at least wanted to be on a research team looking into why is binge eating, like having this sense of utter loss of control over how much you put in your mouth, what you put in your mouth. How could it be so intractable? And that's what my curiosity really was about. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I was just thinking about my impression of you when I first met you. And I definitely thought you had it all together. Like I didn't know anything about this part of your life, and I loved the opportunity to work with you on a team. And I just felt so comfortable. And I knew we were going to be doing some really good work together. And it's just such a reminder that what you see on Facebook, although I didn't see you on Facebook, but what you see on the outside doesn't always represent what's really going on for people.
I just want to say, there's something you said there that's just so important and it really touched me, which is you had no idea what was going on for me. And so for me, because my weight fluctuated so much, like at the time we worked together, it was probably in a 60-pound range. But over the course of my life, I've had 100 pounds extra weight on my body. And so for me, I kept thinking there's a tell, like there's something about this problem I can't hide. And it turned out that there was a colleague we both worked together with who you would have looked at her body, what is a classic sense of stereotypical beauty for a woman. And 10 years of working together, and we happened to go out for dinner one time, and for some reason this came up, and she had been a binge eater for 10 years.
Wow.
I was the first person she ever told.
Wow.
And it's so interesting. There's so much shame around this issue. And you can meet the clinical criteria for binge eating disorder, and you cannot meet the clinical criteria, and you can still have this sense of feeling out of control around your food, eating for reasons that have nothing to do with hunger or the need for energy. And so it's this shaming that really has us quite silenced, and a really big part of why I wanted to see what I could do to help in this area.
Wow. And this whole stuckness, when we feel stuck in a midlife funk, especially, that's what I focus on. It just feels like a piece of your life, like you described, is just so out of alignment with who you are, like who you want to be and who you were meant to be. And when it was happening to me, because I was stuck for 5 years, not with this issue, but I had issues of my own, it was just like, wow, I don't want to be somebody who makes decisions based on fear. And I don't want to be somebody who just is not working closely with people the way I want to. So to get that clarity took so much work.
Mm.
And even though I never thought I would be stuck like that, and when I watched myself in that stuck place, I really couldn't believe it. But I just kept asking other people who I thought knew me better than I knew myself.
Mm.
What should I do? What should I do?
Mm.
Anyway, when it came to your situation, what was the dream?
Well, when I decided that I was never going to give up on this, and it didn't look like I was going to be able to figure it out for me, I decided to go back to school to become a clinical psychologist, like I said. And that was my dream. I thought that was my best chance of trying to figure this out. And I got so far as to have a thesis supervisor lined up. I got through stats, Susie. I made it through stats.
Huh.
I worked in one of the research labs, and I got to work at the food lab at U of T, which is one of the most popular labs. And I just really wanted, if I was going to be in this pain, I at least wanted there to be meaning behind it, because what was behind it before was this sense of so much of my life being taken away. But if I could at least work in the field, I might have something to offer for somebody else if it didn't help me. And so that was my dream, was to create some kind of purpose out of this pain. So instead of feeling like it kept taking something away from me, I wanted it to bring me closer to me. And that was my dream. Yeah.
Right. And I know in your notes you mentioned that coaching together expedited your dream. Can you be a little more specific about that?
It really did, because, I held you in the highest regard among my colleagues where we worked. I just adored you. I thought the world of you. I still do. And when I saw you going down this path, and I saw how you helped me so much, instantly I wanted to know, what possibility might be here, because I had just had my son. He was 1 year old. I still remember submitting my statistics modules. We used to do them online. And if you got them in on time and you got perfect, you would bump your mark up just a little bit. And I remember just missing it by just seconds, and he threw up all over me. And it was just it was going to be doable. It was going to be hard. Hard was okay. But mapping it out, it was going to be a 15-year journey. And because I wouldn't have been able to do it part-time. And so when I saw you help me, I thought I could be an allied professional where I'm not clinical. So I can't diagnose. But if there was something I could do to help people like me, as maybe they were going to therapy or doing other things, I wanted to at least be part of the team. And so that's what I did. And I noticed how because that's part of what we were working on together was my eating. So I thought if Susie can help me in this way, I would like to offer this help alongside other professionals to support people who had binge eating.
I'm so glad you said that because that's what I was really concerned about when I became a coach is, our how does this all work together because we're not clinical.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just been a beautiful way to contribute and to help people. Totally agree with that.
And I think part of what helps here is like really being clear about who we're not, who we are and who we're not, and really supporting people's choices to have additional support if that's what they want. And, really just be behind whatever feels like the best thing for them. And sometimes that won't be us, and that's totally okay.
Yeah, we can totally handle that. No problem. So tell us a bit now about binge eating and midlife women. What's going on there and why can it feel so difficult, like it's too late? Just what is unique about being in midlife and having this challenge?
I think in midlife, so much has already happened. There's so much wisdom, there's so much insight, there's so much experience. And yet, at the same time, um, especially if this is a pattern that's been going on for a long time, there's a sense of they can't trust their bodies anymore. They feel really disconnected from their needs and even from their dreams. And it can often feel like they're even living like under the thumb of food. And so there's this real sense that it's too late for me, but it's not too late. And in fact, what I want to say is it's actually a really good time because with few decades under our belts, we do have wisdom and insight and clarity, and we have more of a sense of what we're willing to say no to and what sometimes we have to say no to, even just to take care of ourselves. And that is really key to, resolving this problem. Um, I think one reason why resignation can seem like the only option, and I remember for me on my journey, sometimes I thought, would it be easier to give up? Because it's so painful to keep trying and feel like I'm failing. Because I get my hope would soar, I'm going to be free, and then I'd find myself back again. And so this sense of resignation can really come at this time, because we've been just struggling for such a long time. But part of what I think makes that even harder is I think because it's so hard to understand binge eating, there's definitely an internal sense of blaming that's happening. Almost always, there's going to be an internal critic, can be very harsh and shaming for eating the way a binge eater eats. But also, we can get implicit criticism from other people, even people we go to help for. I remember going to someone to help with my eating, and I did the very best I could. And one day she just yelled at me and said, "Are you sure you want to stop binge eating?" And it was this real sense of being so alone. And you can like smell fear in the room. Like I could smell the discomfort of the people I was with. And they were highly trained, they were highly skilled, they had all the degrees they should have had, and they were wonderful people and they really wanted to help me. But when I couldn't do it, there was sometimes like an explicit judgment of me, just like I gave an example of, and sometimes it was like just kind of implicit. Maybe it's time we wound down. Maybe you should try something else. Maybe, and so I think that can really contribute to this sense of, oh my goodness, like now I can't trust me. I'm going to other people to help me. And they feel uncomfortable about this. And so that was part of my experience. And I also had the experience of going to someone. I did go to a cognitive therapist who was an eating disorder specialist, and she did really help me a lot too. And I still binged. I binged less often, I binged on less food, and I still had this internal sense of this being out of my control. And this is all over the research. This is one of the beautiful things of going back to school for as long as I did, was I got to read the peer-reviewed research, and the lead investigators were perplexed about how there could be a clear, at that time it was cognitive behavioral therapy, was the clear gold line treatment. How it could clearly help some people, many people in fact, and yet not help a substantial number at all or for long. And that was part of what they were working out at the time. Like, how could this be? And so, really, when I got to that research, that really helped give me a sense of, okay, hang on a second. This doesn't have to be all about me. Maybe there's something else here. So, yeah.
Well, what was it?
So, part of it was the work that you and I did, like really understanding, my thoughts, what was behind, slowing things down enough to notice it wasn't just that the cake disappeared. First of all, I ate the cake. Then it wasn't that I just ate the cake. Before I ate the cake, I felt something. Then it wasn't just that I felt something. It was like that feeling was coming from some belief or thought I was having. So slowing down in that way was really helpful. And for me, and for many of my clients, that is really, really helpful. And there's something else that it just doesn't touch, because it's a rational approach, which makes a lot of sense. Because a lot of binge eating is kind of outdated beliefs that if we can just update the belief, that makes a big difference. So for example, I'll give you one example. When I used to get hungry, I would panic, and that would send me off on a binge. So I always had to make sure I never got hungry. I was so afraid of hunger. And, it turned out that if I could just tell myself, listen, I'm not going to die of hunger. I'm just really hungry right now because I missed the bus. I'm on my way back from school. Whatever it was, I didn't pack enough, or I walked more than I was expecting. And it just turns out that I'm hungry, but I'm going to be home in 20 minutes and I really will be okay. Although this will be uncomfortable. That's a very long thought, but you get the idea.
Totally.
Yeah. So there was this piece of like rational updates could really help, and then, there was something else that sometimes felt like it didn't get touched by that. There was something that was still left. And I ended up 6 years ago taking internal family systems training. And I heard about it actually through a friend and my podcast listeners who kept emailing me and saying, you really have to listen to this guy, Richard Schwartz. And I went to his website several times, and finally, with the third email, I went and I really stayed there. And it was like, oh, wow, there really is something here. And what internal family systems offered was the piece beyond the rationality, if it's there. For some people, the thought work, that's all they need, and it's fantastic. And for some people, it's more. And for me, what I discovered was there were parts of me that were still so stuck in the past. Like I spent years, sometimes guided by practitioners, to go on diets, some of which were deemed pretty reasonable. Some, as I look back on them, they were pretty restrictive. But from one degree to another, I was hungry. And so I had years of just being like so hungry. And I had a part that was still stuck there, that every time I got hungry, it meant, oh my goodness, things are going to be taken away. And so really helping that part of me, and more than just a thought, but really, bringing that part kind of out of the past and into the present, and really almost taking it on a tour of my life now. Like, honestly, I don't do that anymore. I promised myself I would never do that again. There's something about that was so healing. And what I love about IFS is that it was born out of Richard Schwartz listening primarily to people who were bulimic at the time when this theory emerged. And this is what is the really touching part for me. And I feel like binge eaters can say to the world, you're welcome. Because now this is an approach that's just taking the world by storm. I'm an assistant in their trainings, and many of my students have been on the waiting list for 5 years to get in to take a course now. That's how it's evidence-based. It is recognized by SAMHSA now. And, when he first brought this idea to the world stage, the psychotherapeutic community laughed him out of the room. And what it does is it actually listens to the person talk about their experience. And it was one of the first approaches that really allowed the person to make sense. Because on the outside, it doesn't make sense. Why would you have a whole cake if you don't have to have a whole cake? You could have a piece of cake. This is what people used to tell me all the time. Martha, you don't need the whole cake. You can have a piece of cake. And I would be like, I know I could have a piece of cake, but I can't stop with a piece of cake. And what he did was he really listened. And, he had this client that really changed the trajectory of life. She was bulimic, and she was also cutting herself. And, he said that he really felt that on his clinical watch, nobody was going to be doing that. And so he badgered part of her that cut her into promising that it wouldn't do it again until they next met. And so it took 2 hours to get a contract out of this part of her. And when she came back for the next session, she had a gash down the front of her face. And he said it was in this moment that he collapsed into like all of his, this is his own wording, like machismo and kind of clinician and I know, and this has to stop and this is so bad. It all melted. And he said, I don't want to play this game with you. This is too dangerous. And the part of her said to him, I don't want to be playing this game either. I just do this because this is what I did to get her out of her body when she was being abused. And it was this moment of understanding that behind parts that do things that have harms, the intention of them is positive. And that was where the idea of IFS was really born, which is if we can open our hearts enough to listen compassionately to our parts inside, then we discover the parts that are still stuck in the past and we can help them.
Wow, Martha, very powerful story. So it was a breakthrough for you to find this work.
It really, really was. And as I see this, working with my clients now, often on the first session, like I often tell this story because it's like the pivotal moment in Schwartz's kind of, journey into IFS. And I often get a reaction like this. You're talking kind of weird, but something about this is really landing for me, this idea of parts of me. And I'm not just a binge eater in totality. I have a part of me that binges, and I have a part of me that desperately wants to stop, and I have a part that beats the crap out of me for binging, and I have a part that holds all the shame. And wow, for the first time, I don't feel crazy. For the first time, I feel like this actually makes sense. And it's this starting point that this actually does make sense, which kind of flips on the head. The kind of starting point for most approaches is this is wrong, and this is how we're going to stop it. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the stereotypical upbringing of women at our age and how it all plays in, because certainly, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. And when I talk to other people who grew up in the 60s and 70s, there's definitely some similarities about the kind of messaging we all received, intentional and unintentional. So can you tell us a little bit about, being a midlife woman who grew up that way, stereotypically? What are the things that don't help us when it comes to binging?
This is something that I really learned from Gabor Mate in his training, Compassionate Inquiry. And he said he has noticed with his expertise in addiction, he has noticed a definite correlation with people who are people pleasers, people who do things they don't want to do, don't do things they do want to do, are like heavily invested in other people's emotions. Because what it does is it takes us away from what we want. And that's a very painful place to be, especially if it's happening chronically and acutely. And so he really has this beautiful way of talking about how we essentially have two needs. We need to be connected and we need to be authentic. And when we're growing up, uh, especially with the messaging that we get as women, if it's going to come to it, especially as kids, we're going to sacrifice one for the other. We're going to sacrifice being who we really are in order to not be too loud, not get too angry, not cause too much trouble, do all the chores to make sure we help. Like of course, we're going to do that, especially if what it means is then we get approval from people who we are literally dependent on. And sometimes it's more than just approval. It's like love, it's attention, it's affection, it's all the things that we really need growing up. And so this is where this kind of like the moment where we start to part from who we really are. And that's why I think, again, midlife is an excellent time to come back because we've had enough of this by now that many of us are like, done. And it can be hard to learn to say no to things we don't want to say yes to, but we've been around long enough to know how much it hurts to keep doing that. And so, yeah, that's what I think is the connection between the messages that women get in particular and this connection to binge eating, which is why healing binge eating is so powerful. It's way more than about the food or any sense of being out of control with your eating, or even feeling like out of alignment with yourself, because in order to discover what's behind that, we have to come closer to ourselves. And there is a way to do that, which helps us really recognize what's really authentic and to live more closely with that.
Yes. So good. It's just so good what you said. Sorry, I'm a little speechless there for a second. Never good for a podcast host to be speechless. So what would you say are your main lessons that you learned from the whole experience of transitioning to this new idea for you personally of becoming an expert in this area?
That really listening to, sometimes it would be just whispers inside of me. It really mattered. Those were the things. Sometimes they were shouts if I wasn't listening and they had to amp up the volume. But I was hearing inside clear messages about what I needed to be doing. And I could tell, that sense of like dissonance, I could feel it when I wasn't. And, really what I discovered was my eating was kind of the canary for me. It was the signal that something's not right, right? Something doesn't feel right. And it would give me the clue to go inside. So what I really, learned from those whispers was that I did have something of value. I could be struggling with this 30 years in, and I could have something of value to offer to other people that would matter in their lives and that would make my life feel more meaningful too.
Yeah, that is so important. I love how you talked about the whispers, and this really comes up a lot in this community, in the midlife women community, because we're so disconnected. We think we're so disconnected from what it is that we want. And sometimes I also use the word whisper, but sometimes it's a sense, like you're feeling a sense of knowing, but it's not like there's no words attached to it yet. It's just this sense. And getting to the point where you can respect that and value that and appreciate that you have something to offer to yourself, like trusting that inner knowing and wisdom, is really difficult for so many of us who haven't been, as you mentioned earlier, putting ourselves first and very focused on the needs of others. So that is really, really important. So what advice would you give other women in the middle out there who are stuck with food related issues, with binging? What's a first step?
I think in order to be stuck, there has to be like a polarization, like a push and a pull, and recognizing both of those pieces. There's two messages they're receiving. There's this yearning to whatever that might be, and then probably fear or something that's holding them back. And it's really important to listen to both because you're either going to listen to them now, or the one you don't listen to is going to keep tapping you on the shoulder and might throw a banana in front of you when you're walking if you don't listen. And again, it's this idea of we don't have to believe that fear, if it's keeping someone stuck, is a bad thing and we should just get over it. I know sometimes we have to do things when we are afraid, and that makes a lot of sense. And also, sometimes fear has something to say. And so when it becomes possible, and A.H. Alma's has this beautiful expression. It is only in the presence of compassion that we will allow ourselves to see all of who we are. It's something like that. It's really beautiful expression. And this is an example of what it can allow us to see. So if we can allow ourselves to see not just like the beauty behind the dream and the drive and all of the things that we want to create in our lives, but also be open to what could be behind the fear and not assume it's something really terrible we just have to get rid of. We might learn something. And I'm always amazed when I ask a part that's afraid, what are you afraid would happen if somebody created this dream? Inevitably, it's some version of I would lose people in my life. I would anger and threaten some people. I don't want to lose these people. And these are key people in my life. We're talking partners, we're talking parents, we're talking siblings, we're talking best friends. Right. So and that's just an example. Another example is a belief that they're not worth it. And again, this is why this compassion is such a huge piece here, and this willingness just to be open that there's something here that can look like it's getting in the way, but is really trying to help. And when we listen to how it's trying to help, then we can help what it's trying to protect. Because if it's trying to protect this idea of, oh, I'm not worth that, well, we can help that because that came from someplace and we can help heal the part that learned that. And part of what's really beautiful about IFS and doing this is we don't go digging around looking for things. They will come up in the discussions. And when we go back to kind of heal parts that are kind of stuck in the past where they got a message like that, it's not a re-traumatization because part of what's happening is when we listen to our parts, what we'll notice inside is that sense of being kind of really kind of taken over with a part. Like if I'm feeling really afraid, I'm going to feel like really identified with that sense of fear. Like it's going to feel like it's almost all of me. And when I can have that compassion to notice, oh, wow, Martha, you're feeling so afraid. Oh my goodness. Of course you're afraid. It makes sense you're afraid because this is coming up. There's some weight to this. I get it. And you're not alone. I'm right here. IFS offers this beautiful way of being with that I didn't get in other places. So for me, another part of my binging was my emotions were just so intense. And of course, everybody was telling me the things that were true. I wasn't going to die of them. Although I did once teach a coroner. And I said, oh, nobody dies from their emotions. And she said, I don't know about that. But probably I was not going to die from mine. And, it's going to feel bad. You can do hard things, like all the things. And yet there was something about mine that was just unbearable for me. And so this kind of connection with my pain really allowed me to be with it in a really different way. Which then, just like with a part that's afraid or with a part that's sad or whatever it may be, whenever we can be with it, what happens is then that part can relax because finally it has that connection with us. And when that happens, we notice like so many things. We'll notice our body feels more relaxed. We'll feel our perspective opening up. And this is what Richard Schwartz really kind of heard from his clients at the time that were saying, when we talk to my parts like this, with kind of kindness and like respect, what happens is they relax back in me And now I feel calm, compassionate. I feel clear. I feel more confident. I feel connected. I feel courageous. I feel creative. I feel curious. Like it's this blockbuster constellation of qualities, and it's already in there. And that's a place where that can really guide us in our futures. So I guess to wrap it up is it's worth listening to what's inside, because if you're hearing something, it's has something to say that's worth listening to.
So many mic drop moments, my friend. What would you like to promote? I hope it's your amazing new program. Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, so I used to have a membership. It was called the Done Binging membership. And what I often heard from my members was, you have to take this, put it in a curated format so that you take us from A to B, take us through the process. Like, what have you found to be the most helpful? And that's what I did. So I created a signature program. It's called the Done Binging Roadmap. And it's this incredible. I just like the comments people leave after it just really take my breath away. And it's a 9 module course, and there are live calls, and it's a space I've created where it is okay. And not only is it just okay, you're in good company. If you're struggling with your eating, if you're a binge eater, it's a space where it's safe to talk about it. And you know, one of the most interesting things I hear often is, I was in therapy for 10 years and I never once mentioned it. And some of my clients went to talk about this, but there was so much shame, they couldn't talk about it.
Wow.
And even if that's all I do, is they join me on the journey until they feel safe enough. And then if they want to talk to a therapist after, they can, but even just that piece. So it's a community, it's an in-depth program that really walks you through all of the pieces I was talking about, opening to connection, regarding ourselves with care and respect, that we're worth caring for. It's okay to be compassionate towards ourselves about this. In fact, most people, that's what they fear, but it's the thing that will allow them to do the healing they really need to do. And then from there, we talk about what binge eating is, not in a diagnostic way, but just educationally. And also so much more than the criteria, because it is so much more than that.
Right.
And the ways to be with emotion, which I touched on a little bit. And yeah, we cover so many things. And
What a program. So it's called the Done Binging Roadmap. And if you'd like
yes.
to get more information, head over to www.thedonebingingroadmap.com. And of course, there will be a link in the show notes so you can get in touch with Martha and check out this program if it feels like a good fit for you. So again, it is the Done Binging Roadmap, and you can get it at www.thedonebingingroadmap.com. And binging is spelled with an E. So it's BINGEING, thedonebingingroadmap.com. And you can check out the show notes, and you'll also see a link for it there. Martha, thank you so much for taking the time to share your personal experience, your professional experience with this really important topic that women in the middle are pretty tired of at this point, wanting to get more in alignment with who they want to be. So thank you so very much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Susie. It's been a real pleasure.
Okay, that's it for this episode. Remember, if you would like to contact Martha, please head over to www.thedonebingingroadmap.com. Now, done is spelled D-O-N-E, binging, B-I-N-G-E-I-N-G, roadmap.com. To listen to her podcast, go to her website, www.holdingthespace.co, and you'll find it there. And of course, you'll also be able to find the Done Binging podcast on iTunes. All right, now as you know, and as today's interview also mentioned, fulfillment and happiness in midlife is all about being more intentional about your life in general and making sure that you're living your life according to your priorities. The bottom line is, though, that if you don't make an effort to be intentional, you're highly likely to have regrets. This is exactly how I can help you. It starts with your thinking, and this is what we're up to in the Women in the Middle Academy. So if you're ready to become a woman who's more intentional, ready to have permission to be happy and live like time matters, let's talk and see if working together is a good fit. Head over to www.talktosusie.com and book your free momentum call. As you know, my focus as your midlife coach is to help you waste less time spinning and feeling stuck. This is what regret-proofing your life is all about. And remember what I always say, being the queen of your brain domain is the best way to be, and midlife transformation coaching is the fastest way to rediscover joy and purpose after 50. You are not alone, and I can help you. For show notes and links, go to www.susierosenstein.com and click on the podcast tab and look for episode 416. You'll also see a link there for my other show, The Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs, which is about the reality of running your business when you're a midlife gal. It's also on iTunes, Spotify, and all the places. Let's do this, ladies. It's time for you to put yourself first, one thought at a time. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next week.